Academic Arts, Reliable Research. In March 2011, I experienced one of the scariest things that's ever happened to me. In Japan, where I live, we had a triple disaster of a very large earthquake, a tsunami, a tidal wave, and then the Fukushima nuclear power plant was also hit. And it was a very scary time. I remember after that earthquake, I saw this picture on Facebook, and there was a news story about it that said, "This is a picture of poisonous radiation flowing through the ocean." Many people were shocked and afraid. But the truth is, this is not a picture of radiation. It actually is a picture of the height of the waves after the earthquake and the tsunami. But many people saw this and believed it, and it was fake news. So what's my point? We need reliable information. My name is Professor Joseph Polshak, and this is Academic Arts. We're talking about reliable sources. So here's a quote from Aristotle, the great Greek philosopher. He says, "Poetry tends to express the universal, history the particular." So Aristotle's a reliable source, a famous and important philosopher who changed history. But what is the primary source here? How can we get to the source of what Aristotle said? Should we try to find this quote on the internet or maybe in an English translation? The problem is that the original source is in Greek. So if you want to read this sentence in the original, you need to be able to read Greek. And so if you can, you want to get to the primary source. But if you can't read Greek, the best thing you can do is find an English translation of Aristotle's work, in this case Poetics, and then find your quotation for your source. We also have other sources called secondary sources. Here's one of my favorite authors, Dr. Richard Wiseman, professor of psychology. And he, in one of his books, says, "Singing makes people feel happy." Well, that's an interesting quote if you're writing about, for example, the subject of happiness. Wiseman's reliable. He's a professor. And he says singing makes people feel happy. It's on page 63 in his book, The As-If Principle. But there's a problem here. This is actually a secondary source because Wiseman is summarizing another author. He is putting in simple English what other scholars have said. So the primary source actually comes from this article, Choral Singing and Psychological Well-Being. And here's the quote from the original article that Wiseman summarizes. The original article from Clift et al. Says, "Choral singing engenders happiness and raised spirits, which counteract feelings of sadness and depression." So here you can see the exact reference for where this comes from. And the point is, you want to try to get to the primary source. In one sense, Richard Wiseman, we're quoting him, he's a primary source if we're quoting what he says, but if he's summarizing someone else, then we need to go to the primary source. And if we go to these primary sources, we want them to be reliable, like the pillars of this beautiful library at the University of Alabama. So what is reliable? Well, who is the author, right? Is she respected in her field from a good university? Is it a good publisher? Does she cite her sources? Do you know where she gets her information? So with the sentence that Richard Wiseman said, "Singing makes you feel happy," I was able to trace that down to the original article because Richard Wiseman cited his sources. So reliable sources. So what is reliable? Well, how can we judge? Here are some things to think about when you're looking at an author. What is the author's purpose? Why is this author writing this? Is the author neutral or trying to be neutral and objective? Or is he or she promoting another person's point of view? Right? Is this author promoting only one side? So that's the question, right? Does he have a point of view, an axe to grind, as we say in English? In other words, is the author being fair? Is the author being accurate? And is the author being logical? We want to know if we're looking at reliable sources. What about online sources? What is reliable online, right? what internet sources are good. Are you careful with the internet, right? Who is the author, right? Is the author or the source a reliable, a respected author, a respected university, a reliable media source, a well-known organization? Do we know where this information is coming from? So especially be careful with Wikipedia and social media, because on social media especially, there's a lot of fake news and biased news that gets presented. We want to be as objective and as fair as possible. So in a word, we want clear, we want correct, we want reliable information that is presented logically, accurately, and with fairness. That's all I have for today. Thank you for listening.